Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a nice day outside. That puts me in a good mood. It also puts me in a good mood when I'm able to come in here and talk about a topic that I know people really want to hear me talk about, or want to hear anybody talk about who knows what they're talking about. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit right here in the beginning, but that's okay because I got slides, so I'll be focused. Hey, I want to give a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time, and this is relating to LinkedIn. I've sometimes hear people talk about how you don't need to pay attention to the follower count, things like that on YouTube and others. It's not about how many followers you have. Well, on YouTube, I totally agree. I don't know anybody on YouTube, even though there might be some friendly comments in there. I don't know those people. I have no idea how to know who they are. But on LinkedIn, having a large follower count in your space, in your market, is really good when somebody else looks at you and is considering connecting or following with you. When they see that you guys have 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000 followers. I literally had somebody from the government follow me, and it was just shocked me. There was like 1,700 followers we had or connections we had in common. But that reinforced to her and to me that, hey, we're probably both in the same swim lane. It makes sense for us to connect. It's just kind of a social proof to somebody else when you have connections in common. So this is one reason. It's just a tip here at the beginning of the training on why you want to keep increasing your connections on LinkedIn with other people. Stay in your market, right? If you're in the federal market and doing sales, connect with other government contractors, federal buyers, etc., and you'll build up your network really strong. That was just a tip for success for those showing up early and on time. I always appreciate when you do. Usually when I do my training, I talk on topics that really are very helpful to companies that are small, medium, and billion-dollar firms. My target audience are small business government contractors, but what I teach, it's a process. And so the process helps billion-dollar firms and it helps brand new firms. But today's topic is a little different. It's designed specifically for people who are thinking about getting into government contracting or have just gotten into government contracting and taking a relook at your business. But I really want to go back to the beginning. If I had my friend say, hey, I want to start a company. What are your thoughts? Like, I want to start a government contracting business. What are your thoughts? And I want to introduce my friend to government contracting, give them some recommendations for early, fast success, right? And so first thing I would kind of do is set their expectations a little bit better. Sometimes we hear the number trillions of dollars. The federal government spends trillions. Well, they really do. Their federal budget is trillions. But a huge portion of that goes to paying the interest on our credit card, basically, right? A huge portion of that goes to Social Security and to other mandatory non-discretionary spending. And non-discretionary basically means you don't have any say in it. We just have to spend it. So you have to pay the interest on the debt we have, all those other things. That's the trillions, right? And so the trillions comes down to something that's still really, really good, where the federal government awards contracts in the billions, right? And I don't mean individual contracts, but overall government contracting. That's the world you're thinking about when you think about getting into government contracting. That's around a $700 to $800 billion pool of money, right? So all of us are in there. Brand new companies, you who's thinking about getting in, you who's been in here a little while, and Booz Allen who's been here forever and is $1 billion company. We're all kind of vying for that $700 to $800 billion. And so that's the contracting dollars that happens. And then the thing I really want you to understand is forget about the billions, because that's really not you. When you're coming in, the only thing I want you to understand is that if you can define what you sell, right, and it's something that the government generally buys, and the government buys almost everything, you can be awarded in your company millions. It'll take you years. Do not think you're going to come in and get millions in the first year or $1 million in 1 million in the first year. You could, if you're very aggressive and you've got some good credibility behind you, sure, you could do that, right? I could start a new company and I could do that if all I did was grow a government contracting business. But I just want you to understand, right? Trillions become billions, billions become millions, and millions, though, still build a good company for you. So the money is there, but there's a process for success, and I'm going to talk about that today. I do want you to understand, though, when you start a small business or any business, well, I guess when you start, it's always small, so not any. But when you start a small business in the government space or anywhere else, there's basically three ways that I like to tell you that you make money, right? And if you think about this, this is your company's maturity levels. It goes from level 1, level 2 to level 3. And so level 1, you're paying yourself. You're starting a business. You need to make sure your family eats. So make sure you personally are making the money for your company. Now, I don't know what you do or sell, and I can't really know totally while we're doing this, but you need to know what that is and pay yourself. And so for me, let's say I'm an IT guy, generally doing computer stuff. Well, I would go get some sort of business where I could be the one doing the work. And I'm getting $50 an hour or $100 an hour, and now I'm paying myself. I'm doing it through my business, but I'm paying myself. Phase 2 is when I hire, let's say 5 or 10 people, and the profit from their efforts pay my salary. That's phase 2. This is how I describe the growth. Pay yourself, get your team to pay you, and now you've graduated to phase 3, which is start growing your company. And the reason I like laying that out is because I want to remind people, don't start in phase 3. Phase 3 is when you're trying to go out and get big contracts with the government. No, just pay yourself and then get a team that grows with you. That's the evolution of a company for me in a nutshell. Put GovCon Rocks into the chat if you're excited for today's training about government contracting, businesses having success, especially if you're thinking about getting started. I'm really excited to give you guidance on that. I'm going to break my guidance up into 3 phases. First, I want to talk about the market and help you understand when we say government contracting in the federal market, it means this compared to all of this. And so I want to talk to that so you understand it. And then I want to talk about the 3 ways you make money in the federal market. This is really, there's only 3 ways, right? I talked about the evolution a minute ago. That's the past, but there's 3 revenue streams. And I'm going to talk to you about those because it's really important to understand them as you're growing in the federal space. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up with giving you 10 steps you should do if you're going to start a government contracting business today. Do these 10 things. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. Not one of them says go register in sam.gov. Not one. So I'll wrap up with that. Okay, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I'm founder of CallPlan AI, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army as a small business government contractor, just like you're doing, right? And since 2018, I've been teaching people that government contracting is not a secret. It's a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. This is going to be what I'm teaching you today in those 10 steps at the end. That's a predictable process, or that's a process that leads to predictable results. If you haven't subscribed already to my government contracting success newsletter, do so. We put out content that's only stuff that's useful for you and your growth. An example is today's article was on, I think there's 825 sources sought notices that are due in the next 30 days, basically. And if you don't know what sources sought notices are, this is when the government says, we're thinking about buying something. Is anybody out there willing to sell it to us? In a very simple way, that's what that is. So it's awesome. You don't really see that a lot. And in the federal space, you see that. Also, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. I put a ton of content out there. Plus, when you're following me, your connections and my connections begin to create a bigger network for each other. So that's good. And then tomorrow, if you haven't signed up already, and this is for more experienced people, tomorrow I'm going to be talking about how to 10x your chances of having winning proposals and to win more. 10x your win rate on the proposals you submit. Okay, so let's get rocking and rolling. When you think about government contracting in the federal market, it's really important to put it in perspective. First off, when we say the word market, I just wanted to stop and come back and make sure we're all on the same page. A market is just a way to divide customer types, right? I'm not here to be an academic or an expert on the economy. I'm saying, as a sales guy and a business owner, markets are just our way of saying this group of people, this group of businesses, right? And so there's what I call main markets and sub-markets, because sometimes people blend them. The main markets, in the way I describe it, is the federal market. So that's the entire federal government. Then there's state, local, and education, what we call SLED. So when you think about state market, there's 50 of those, right? Plus the protectorates. And then there's local. These are counties and little cities or towns. And so you're talking about tens and tens of thousands of those. And then education, I think there's like 15, maybe there's 50,000 different educational organizations, school systems, et cetera. And so they make up SLED. Then you've got commercial. This is anything private, right? We call them the private sector and the public sector sometimes. The federal market and SLED is the public sector, where basically the public taxpayer money is paying all those organizations or giving those organizations money to spend. And then you got the commercial side. That's all the private companies. When you think about Walmart or the local supermarket down the road, those are all private companies. And then the last group is nonprofits. So the markets are broken up by, in federal, you can put into public sector, but federal, SLED, commercial, and nonprofit. And then really quickly, because I want to come back to those top ones, sub-markets is where we just start breaking it up further. There's healthcare, but healthcare is nowhere, right? Healthcare is everywhere. If you think about healthcare, states and counties, et cetera, the SLED side, they manage hospitals. The federal government manages hospitals and healthcare in the Department of Veterans Affairs or HHS, et cetera, right? And then commercial, there's commercial hospitals that are out there. So the healthcare kind of goes across the board of all those main markets. And that's why I say it's such a big market, because you could say you do healthcare, but in what market? To me, you want to pick up a specialty like healthcare and then dive into the main market. I put a couple of other examples of sub-markets like space or the finance market. If you're doing technology in the finance market, you might hear people call it fintech. It's all just fancy ways of saying the market and the group of people you're targeting as a business. And so when you're a business and you're trying to stand your company up, you need to first understand which market are you going into. This is why I want to talk about why I love the federal market. And I think it is the easiest of all the markets to be in. And that's counter sometimes to what you might hear in other places. The reason I think it's the easiest is for its full transparency. If I just use one word, transparency, that's why the federal market is the best market to come into. When I say transparency, I mean almost anything the government wants to buy, I can see. I can just go online and they have all these tools to be able to see it. So I can see what they're going to buy. I can see what they bought. I can see who they bought them from, my competitors. I can see how much they paid for it, right? When I have that kind of information, I've got full transparency. I can go in and find out who were the contracting officers, the people who actually signed it. Literally, if you ask me to, I could give you 10,000 names of buyers right within 5 minutes, right? It would take like 30 seconds to show it to you, 5 minutes to download it and give it to you. That kind of information is nowhere else. The other thing is the rules are all basically the same. How the government buys, the acquisition process, how the government buys is the same across the entire federal government. So when you think about $800 billion or $700 billion of spending happening, when you go from this part of the federal government to this part, it fundamentally is the same process. They go through market research, they do some cost estimation to guess how much they think it's going to cost, and then they reach out to you to get a quote or a proposal, and then they buy it, right? And I'm simplifying the process, but compare that to 50 states. Every single state is different. Compare that to tens of thousands of counties. Every single county is different. Something else the government has at the federal level is a thing called CPARS. Doesn't matter what it stands for, but CPARS is basically the federal government's Yelp reviews of you and me. So when a federal buyer buys something from us and they work with us, at a certain point, they can give us a review, and they put that in CPARS, the Yelp for government contracting. And so in there, the government is able to see how great a work we've done. They're able to find us. There is one pool called SAM.gov where you will find every single vendor who's selling to the federal government. So these are your competitors. If you want to research them, these are your teammates, which I'll talk about in a minute. Anyway, so I love that the whole federal market for this idea of simplicity in the processes and the commonality of the tools. Every federal agency uses basically the same tools. They use SAM.gov, they use FPDS, CPARS, these common set of tools used across hundreds and hundreds of thousands of federal buyers. Comparing that to like the commercial market. Imagine trying to sell to Bank of America, and now you go over to Capital One or whoever that is. It's a whole nother selling process. On the commercial side, I know people who sell into one part of a company, like Northrop Grumman, for example, and struggle to get to the next part. But in the federal government, like for example, in the Army, often the buyers who you work with get transferred to another unit. And so there's a lot of that movement around the federal government. There's a lot of collaboration among buyers within the federal government in different agencies. So for example, think chief information officers, CIOs, they come together across the government to talk about best practices in your agency and my agency. You don't really see that in the commercial space, for example, except for at a conference. So these are reasons I really like it. It's very easy to get in. And the last reason is, and I'll talk more about this in a second, is because you can find all sorts of companies that are ahead of you on the success as a federal government contractor. You can find them, find the owner of those companies, and build relationships pretty quickly with somebody who will remember what it's like to be starting, who will give you a chance. Right? They're not going to give you a handout, but they're going to look at you and go, oh, you've got an expertise that doesn't compete with ours. I'd love to sit there and team up with you to find ways we can collaborate and go after things. So that's why I like federal market. I love the federal market, and I've sold in all the markets. Okay, so inside the federal market, I teach that there's 3 ways to make money. And it's really important to understand, when I talk about 3 ways to make money, I'm talking about 3 revenue streams. Before I get to that, though, I just wanted to talk about something I said at the introduction. I don't know if everybody saw it, but it's this idea of how you get paid, where you pay yourself, then you get your team to pay you, and then you start growing your company. I like doing things in 3. So something else I'm trying to get you to understand is, what is subcontracting? Because I'm going to talk about that in a second. But sometimes until you get it explained, you're not quite sure. Subcontracting is just you doing work under another company that is working for the government. The way you can make money as an individual who's starting a business, the way you can make money is you can get a job. You get a W-2 and you're working for a company, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Excuse me. As you start getting entrepreneurial, man, that's a hard word. I need an easier word. But as you start moving that direction, you go, hey, I want to go off on my own. So you become a 1099 consultant, what I call a 1099 personal. Right? I just made up that term. But 1099 personal, what it means is I'm just a consultant, right? And I used to do that occasionally, where I'd go work for somebody and it was just me to them. My social security number is what I would give them, but I'm on my own and I don't have anybody's rules. I'm not following your employee handbook or any of that other stuff. You're just paying me to do the work that needs to be done. And then the last step is 1099 company. So we used to call that corp to corp. But when you go 1099 your company 1099ing to another company in the federal market, that basically is subcontracting. So you start a company, and by the way, don't start it yet if you haven't got there. Let me get to the end and show you the 10 steps first. But you have a company, and that company has a tax number. Instead of a social security number, it has an EIN. And now your company is basically 1099ing with another company to subcontract. That means, hey, other company, you've got the Army as a customer. I can support part of that. I will work for you, and together we'll go support your customer. That's all subcontracting is. So coming from that, there's 3 ways to make money in the federal government. You can subcontract under a small business. All that means is, in the federal government, there's 2 categories of businesses, small businesses and large businesses. You can go find out another day what's the difference, but basically think about anything over 50 million is a large business. I'm not getting into any other details. Anything below 50 million, chances are it's still a small. And again, I'm not getting into the specifics of it, but subcontracting under a small business is one way to make money. That's one path. The second path is to go to the federal agencies and land a contract on your own. That's prime contracting directly to the agency. And the last one is go to a large prime contractor like Lockheed Martin or Amazon or Microsoft. Go to these large businesses and become a subcontractor under them to support their customers. I named these in this order, 1, 2, 3, because this is the path of least, or the easiest to the hardest. It is really hard to work with large. Don't even bother, right? If you're under 5 years, don't even bother, right? Unless you've got some specific relationship. But even if you actually left the large and started a company, it's harder for you to go back and try to get a contract than it is to go to a small business, because small businesses remember what it was like to be you. Small businesses don't do everything. So if you've got an expertise and you bring it to them, for example, say you do flooring and the other company does painting. Well, you could go together and maybe they are winning opportunities where while they're talking to the customer about painting, they go, hey, how about we do your floors? I know Neil. Neil does the floors. We'll bring them together, right? There's a much easier chance to do common things as a subcontractor under a small business than there is with a large business who probably does everything. Hopefully that makes sense. And the last part of it, the prime contract in the middle there, that's easier to get than it is to get work with a large prime. But the government doesn't need to take risks. The government is trying to accomplish a mission. They're not trying to buy your product. They're not trying to buy your service. They're trying to accomplish a mission. The Army fights wars. DHS protects our borders. Whatever you're selling needs to help them accomplish that mission. And so when they're looking at us sellers and vendors, they want to know we can do that. And one of the ways they know we can do that is if we have experience being paid for it as a company. So don't go knocking on their doors until you have some experience. It's okay if you have experience in the commercial sector, a couple of million, and you bring it over here, that's okay. But for most of us, when we're just starting a business, we don't have any experience. And so that's why I tell you, subcontract with a small business, and you will get that experience. You will also learn all about government contracting from that small business. One last thing I put on this slide is Neil's rule, right? And I just felt like saying my name. No, it's a lot of things I share is from my experience. I'm not trying to say it's the only way, but I am saying this is my way. This is what I would recommend you do. And one thing I would recommend you do if you're getting into government contract is subcontract under a small business for $3 million or 3 years, whichever is longer. What that means is just that one revenue stream, that first revenue stream of subcontracting under a small business, you go support them, supporting their federal clients. Do that for 3 years or until you make 3 million, whichever takes longer. So if you make 3 million in the first year, keep subcontracting 2 more years. I'm telling you, if you do that, you will build a $100 million company in 20 years, right? 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, right? But if you sit there and go too fast to the process of going to a prime contract, that's where a lot of us get caught. And I did too, right? We get caught up in the busy work and all the hassles, but subcontracting will help you get a lot of traction before you start trying to push in there. Hey, I just wanted to thank our sponsors, Graham, who does staffing services, and ASL, or American Sign Language Services, Steel Toed, who does CMMC and cybersecurity support services. CallPlan AI is my company. If you're looking to generate or start and build relationships, go check out CallPlan AI. And then Restream, they're who I use to broadcast out to social media channels like to LinkedIn, to YouTube, etc. I very much thank our sponsors for supporting us. I like bringing this content to everybody out there. Okay, crowded slide. In fact, let me get rid of my face a little bit and just give you the 10 steps. Now, I know a lot of you like to read fast, so you'll read through here. One thing I said at the beginning of today's training is you will not see me say register in SAM. I do not believe in that. I do not believe that you should go start a company, an LLC in your state or in Delaware or whatever. I don't believe you should start anything until you find out whether you can sell something. And the first thing you're going to sell is yourself. And you can do that long before you register in SAM. And registering in SAM and doing all that stuff, if you've ever heard about it, it really doesn't take that long. Sometimes there's slow delays, but don't worry about it. So here's the 10 steps in the order I would do it. First thing you need to do, and I'm going to go really fast because I got 5 minutes left here, something like that. First thing you need to do is define what you sell. We call this a clear, focused offer. The more, so for example, for me, when I started my last company, I literally was doing 1099 gigs with a customer. I had a couple of customers, but they were all 1099 personal gigs. But I was doing Microsoft SharePoint. So I started a company, a government contracting business, and that was my clear focused offer. I do Microsoft SharePoint services. What do you sell, right? And you don't have to say it now if you don't know, but if you do, by the way, put it in the chat. But 3 things, and narrow that down. The more you can narrow it down, the faster you can make money. The broader what you sell is, the longer it'll take you to do that. Second thing you do, once you define what you sell, Microsoft SharePoint services, identify your top 50 keywords. This is an exercise you just need to do. And keywords are key phrases. So SharePoint, I said Microsoft SharePoint services. Another thing that I might say as a key phrase is Microsoft Online. Or I might sit there and say Power Apps, which is related to SharePoint. I'm an expert at SharePoint. So come up with 50 keywords, hit a whiteboard, put a piece of paper in front of you, write it down. Go to GPT, man. Go to whatever your AI tool is and just put in, here's my clear focused offer. Give me 50 keywords. Pick the ones you like, put it back in and say, give me 50 more, right? Until you get a good solid 50 words that if somebody went searching for you on that keyword, they would find you. That's what you want to do with keywords. So the second thing after your clear focused offer is identify your keywords. The third thing you do is go over to the Census Bureau, or you can go to a free tool that I got, but figure out what 10 NAICS codes and that align to what you sell. So if you don't know what a NAICS code is, it's basically that number that's on a banana that you can look at and type it in and say, oh, it's a banana, right? A NAICS code is just a definition, a number that defines what you sell. Don't worry about it too much. But you go to census.gov, you can go to SBA, there's all sorts of places. Just go to Google and say, hey, here's what I sell. What's the 10 best NAICS? I have a free tool that's out there that you just put in the keywords that you did, and it comes back and it says, these are the 10 NAICS you should use. The reason that's important is you'll use it down the line to find where the government's paying other people for what you sell. Don't worry about it, but do that task. Then go to get PSCs, right? These are just similar to NAICS codes, a little bit more specific to the government. You can research that later, but identify PSCs that fit well for you. That's step 4. Step 5, this is the fun part. You're going to create your only marketing asset. Forget about a website. Don't even worry about a website at the moment. Create a capability statement. You can go to govconchamber.com and find my templates out there and my training. You can go to anywhere on Google and say, how do I build a capability statement for the federal market? And it doesn't matter whose template you use at the moment. Just build it in one day. Don't take longer. Don't use pictures. Just build a capability statement that basically is taking your key offer and your keywords and putting it down. That's step 5. And by the way, you can do all this on Google. What I'm saying, go figure it out. I've done 1,000 trainings on all of this for free on YouTube, so you can find it there. Number 6, that's all the prep stuff. Now you're getting ready to sell. Number 6, I want you to go out and build a target list of small business owners to call. So you can go into a tool called dsbs.sba.gov. When you go in there, you'll find 350,000 small businesses. Type in some of your very top keywords and look at the companies that are coming up. You can decide which ones you want to do, but you want to find 100 companies in there that you put into a spreadsheet or something, and now you got your target list. These are the people you're going to reach out to in a minute. I'll come back to that. Number 7, update your LinkedIn profile, and I should have made that number 6. Update your LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure it just looks decent and professional, because the minute you start calling somebody to get a meeting, they're going to go over to LinkedIn and see who this person is, right? So make sure you update your LinkedIn profile, and your capability statement, put that on your LinkedIn profile. So number 6 was the target list, though, of small business owners. You're building a list of people you're going to call. And I know I'm going really fast. I have tons of training on every one of these bullets inside of YouTube, inside of LinkedIn, that are all free, and you can get access to them. But let's talk about number 8, because now we're getting rocking and rolling, right? You've got a list of 100 people. Email those people, every one of those people on the target list, and take 5 days to do it. Don't do it in one day. Email one person at a time. And you're reaching out and saying, hey, I'm just getting started in government contracting. I'm really good at Microsoft SharePoint, but not so much in the government contracting space. I was hoping I could get on a call and see if there's a way for us to maybe work together on future opportunities, right? And again, I have tons of training on how do you have those meetings, but you want to email those people. Then you want to follow up and call them. And I didn't put this in here, but you want to keep doing that over and over again until you get a meeting, or they go, nah, I'm not interested, right? And you spread that over a month, whatever time it takes. As long as you're nice, you can always follow up with people. So number 8 is emailing them. Number 9 is calling them, and you generally won't get people. So leave a voicemail and use a voicemail script that just in 15 to 30 seconds says what you said in the email. And then number 10, have introduction meetings. This part is really important. You're trying to have a meeting with somebody and say, I sell Microsoft SharePoint services. In fact, that's what we're good at. I just stood up a new company. I would like to find out if I can subcontract with you on future opportunities where I can learn about government contracting and bring my expertise to you. Again, I do a whole bunch of training on how do you have those meetings so that they turn to success. But if you're good at what you do, what you sell, the other person's probably going to want to work with you and talk to you. My point for doing this list is to say, don't do all this heavy lifting of forming a company or going into SAM.gov and all these other things until you go talk to a few people and say, I do Microsoft SharePoint services. Would we be able to work together? If you talk to 100 people and you can't find anybody to say, yes, we'll work together, why form a company, right? But I'm positive you will find people who want to work with you. Then you go, all right, I'm going to go register on SAM really quick. I'll be right back, right? Hopefully that makes sense. These are top 10 tips or top tips for getting started. Here's what I want you to remember. I'm out of time. So very quickly, don't rush to stand up a company. You can always stand it up at any point. First, determine what you sell. And then second, get some validation from those small business prime contract holders that they would work with you. Then start building your company. This is how I would start a government contracting business today. Hopefully you found it valuable. In your whole process or journey, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.